make that journey to that foreign country, because you've made that journey yourself. And maybe you want to share that knowledge with your children, and you sit them down and you say to your children, I'm going to share with you everything I learned from making this journey to this foreign place. But if your child has no wish to go to that foreign country, your advice will fall upon deaf ears. It won't resonate too much with your child. But if your child also has a wish to go to that foreign country, because maybe they've overheard you talking about it, how it's such a wonderful place, then with them having the wish to go there, and with your wish to share your experience and your advice on how to make that journey in the smoothest way, your child will listen with incredibly attentive ears, because they're interested in what you have to say, because they want to make that journey themselves. And so a teacher's advice is like a parent sharing with their children. Except the foreign land we're talking about here is the experience of full enlightenment, permanent inner peace. And a teacher gave advice to help us on that journey to experience profound mental peace. But that advice really only resonates with us if we have some wish in our own heart to make that journey. Otherwise, the advice may just fall upon deaf ears, a little bit like a parent giving advice to their children when their children has no wish to go to this foreign land that the parent is very inspired about. So tonight's class, we are not diving straight into the advice from a teacher's heart. Tonight's class is mainly about developing the wish to follow the path to real inner peace and happiness. If we receive a teacher's advice holding this wish, it will have so much more power upon us to benefit us. So tonight I'm going to talk about what is enlightenment, why we need to be enlightened, and how to become enlightened. And these are Buddhist classes, but I'm not trying to convert you to becoming a Buddhist. This is a personal choice. I just share with you, through the kindness of my own teacher, Venerable Geshe Khalsang Gyatso, Buddha's teachings and things that I have found very beneficial, very meaningful. And you just take on board whatever you find useful from your side. So I'm going to lead us now on a contemplation that will take us to a place where we feel encouraged and determined to realize our highest spiritual potential for the benefit of others. So the first question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask a few questions this evening, is do you want to live a meaningful life? Like if you asked anyone that question, if you were to just randomly drive somebody somewhere and ask someone on the street, do you want to live a meaningful life? Wouldn't everyone, without exception, say yes? And this is such an important question. It's a question that we need to ask now. And how meaningful do you want your life to be? If you had an option between not very meaningful or reasonably meaningful or immensely meaningful, what would you answer? Everyone who's listening to this class would choose an immensely meaningful life. So we all share this in common. All of us here, we want to live a meaningful life. And if we had choice, we would lead the most meaningful life possible. So the question is, what is the most meaningful life we can live? There are so many things we can do with our life. We can earn money. We can gather possessions. We can have a family. At some point, we'll be able to travel the world again. We can learn to play golf. But what is the most meaningful thing we can do with our life? So to me, meaningful means that which brings the most long-term benefit. For example, if you have an hour spare later on this evening, maybe after this class, you have an hour spare. And tomorrow, you have an interview that you're quite nervous about, anxious, or some situation tomorrow that you're feeling anxious about. And you have a choice between watching TV for an hour or reading and contemplating some spiritual teachings that help you to change your perspective, your mind, towards this challenging situation tomorrow. That will bring you some peace of mind with respect to it. Which is the most meaningful way of spending that hour? So you may watch TV for an hour, and for that hour, your mind is taken away from the problems of your life. You can forget the problems of your life for an hour. But after that hour has ended, we're back still feeling nervous and anxious about the following day. But if we spent some time contemplating spiritual teachings that teach us how to change our perspective on things in a way that brings us greater peace and mental stability, I think we would have to say that time spent is most meaningful. So meaningful means what brings you most benefit, what brings you most long-term benefit. Or you could be helping a friend who is anxious about something, and you have a bit of time, you listen to their problems, and maybe there's a couple of ways in which you can think of helping them to overcome their worry and their stress in their life. One is to maybe give them a huge basket of popcorn and a collector's set of Game of Thrones, and they can just binge and just forget their problems for a while. Of course, maybe you would be helping them temporarily to take their mind off things. Or if you had some wisdom and you had some experience of meditation, you could use that same time, and they could use that same time, learning how to meditate, developing mental peace. Maybe you could teach them how to meditate. And that practice won't just benefit them then, but that inner peace that they develop will be a source of happiness and stability for them for week after week after week after month after month after year. Because as somebody who has a strong and stable mind can maintain happiness, mental stability all the time. So you can see that some activities are definitely more meaningful than others. We can definitely distinguish between meaningful activities and not so meaningful activities. A meaningful activity is anything that you do that is maximizing your capacity for experiencing happiness. And therefore, isn't the most meaningful life we can live a life where we bring most maximum happiness to ourselves, long-term happiness to ourselves, and also to be of maximum benefit to others. If meaningful activities is anything you do to bring long-term happiness to yourself and benefit to others, then the most meaningful thing we can do is to live a life where we bring real, true happiness into our heart, maximum happiness into our heart, long-term happiness, and to bring happiness, long-term happiness, into the lives of those around us. So there's so many things we can do with our life. Like I said, we can follow a career path. We can earn money, gather possessions, own a home, have a family, learn to play golf, go skydiving. But we do have to remember that these things are impermanent. If we see the meaning of our life in these things, then when we're separated from them, which is inevitable, our life will lose its meaning. And this is why Buddha encouraged us not to see the meaning of your life as external development, because at some point you're going to be let down. I shared on Meditations for World Peace with a very good friend of mine who was with her uncle when he passed, who led a very successful career, very successful life. But at the end of his life, he said, "I've been deceived." Because he realized all those things that seemed so important and seemed to be the real meaning of human life, he'd invested all his time and energy into them, neglecting the things that are of real significance and real meaning. And he could see, now I have to leave them all behind. I take none of this with me into the future. So we really need to think, what is the meaning, the real meaning of human life? Because when we get to the end of our life, there is no undo button. We can't go back in time. It's not like Microsoft Word or Mac Pages or any app where if you make a mistake, you can just hit the undo button back to the place where things were right. When we get to the end of this life, there is no undo button. We can't relive this life. So if we make a mistake on how we live our life, then we're going to be very regretful at the end of our life. Wouldn't you be so careful if the undo button was taken off every computer app throughout the world? There'd be an uproar, wouldn't there? Imagine you had to use Microsoft Excel or Word or a design package without an undo button. You'd have to be really careful, because you can't make a mistake, you can't go back. So we have to be really careful with our life. We have one shot at this life. And we want to use it in the most meaningful way possible. So I'm going to share with you what for a Buddhist is the most meaningful way in which we can live our life. And you can see from your side, your perspective, whether you think it's the most meaningful way to live our life. So Buddha taught that the meaning of human life is to attain enlightenment, to realize our highest spiritual potential, and to attain enlightenment. So what does this mean? Attaining enlightenment has two parts. First of all, it means to eradicate all negativity from within our mind. Buddha recognized that it is the negativity in our mind that is the source of all our day-to-day unhappiness. And that if we can eradicate this negativity, we can develop a stable and unchanging happiness from within. Because we all want to experience true happiness. None of us want to experience problems. And to do that, we have to identify a true cause of happiness. Inner peace is the only true cause of happiness. Everything else in your world, if you turn to it as a true cause of happiness, it will cause us suffering. Try it with pizza. If it's a true cause of happiness, the more pizza you eat, the happier you become. I will personally sponsor you to eat 15 pizzas if you believe they are a true cause of happiness. And at the end of it, you can just tell me how blissed out you are. But you'll probably have to tell me that from the toilet. Because it will become immensely painful. Inner peace is the only true cause of happiness. At the moment, our experience of happiness is fleeting and interrupted. The continuum of our happiness is not stable. We are up and down, up and down. Happy, anxious, stressed, happy, anxious, happy, happier, depressed, okay, stressed, worried, blissfully happy, blissfully depressed, up, down. There's no equilibrium in our mind. If you had a siren on the top of your head that would go off every time you develop some anxiety in your mind, how often would that siren go off? Buddha taught that temporary happiness, interrupted happiness, is not good enough. What we need is a stable, uninterrupted experience of happiness from moment to moment, and that it is possible, because if we can learn to develop a peaceful mind from moment to moment to moment, we have our own cause of happiness from within. We can experience an uninterrupted peace and happiness from within, generated by our peaceful state of mind. So this is one aspect of the mind of enlightenment. It is free from all negativity. The other aspect of enlightenment is that when we are enlightened, we develop all the positive qualities of mind needed to benefit others. Our loving kindness, our compassion, and wisdom. There is no doubt that the stronger your mind is, the more stable and strong your mind is, the more you can benefit others. The more long-term happiness you can help to bring into the lives of others. This world needs it. This world is crazy at the moment. That's the world that's appearing. People lack mental peace. The problems we see in the world are a symptom of people lacking mental peace. And if we lack mental peace, we're a part of the problem rather than a part of the solution. But if we can cultivate, awaken our qualities of loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom, we will develop a mental peace and stability that will bring tremendous benefit to people in this world. Everyone you meet, you can touch their life in some way through your example and through the peace that you hold in your heart. So Buddha explained that this, we can call it attainment, the attainment of our highest spiritual potential, enlightenment, is the most meaningful thing we can do with our life. Because through attaining enlightenment, we eradicate all the negativity from within our own mind that is the cause of our own suffering. And we also develop all the positive qualities of mind needed to truly help our friends, our family, and everyone throughout the world. It is through the attainment of enlightenment that we can bring most long-term benefit to ourselves and others. And you remember that before, when I gave the examples, I think you would have agreed the most meaningful thing, the most meaningful activity we can do is that which brings the most long-term happiness to ourselves and others. The attainment of enlightenment is the most meaningful thing we can do, because it brings most long-term benefit to ourselves and others. So why should we attain enlightenment? So just think, enlightenment is the fulfillment of your highest potential. So Buddha explained how all of our unhappiness is unpleasant feelings. So disappointment, depression, sadness, worry, anxiety, all of these are unpleasant feelings. And the cause of these unpleasant feelings is our negative minds. He said that there is nothing in your external world that can cause you to feel a particular way. If there was, you would have no choice whatsoever other than to experience it in the way that you are, because your feelings are being caused by your external world, that which you have no control over. There's nothing more disempowering than believing that the cause of how we feel is what somebody else is doing, or a situation we're in, or the government, or people, life. None of these things can cause us suffering, because suffering is feeling. And the only thing that can create feeling is mind. Two people observing the same thing, one of them experiences it as okay. Another person may be in the same situation, experiencing it as unbearable. We know two people standing in a line can have very different responses. Two people in a line waiting to get on a plane. And one person is so angry, they experience unbearable pain. And there's somebody there next to them experiencing exactly the same situation, who is contemplating the wonders of modern technology, the kindness of others. Even though this plane is late, isn't it amazing that I can jump on this plane? I can be taken to see a member of my family across the world who's sick. I can be with them by their side. I can help them in dependence upon the kindness of others. Is it such a big deal that it's late? It just depends on how you see it. But who's creating all the pain in the mind of the person who is experiencing it as unbearable? They are. There is no creator of the painful feelings that we experience other than our own mind. And so if we can learn to control our mind, we can control our feelings. And if we can eliminate negative minds, we can eliminate painful feelings. And that's what we all want. That's what we spend every day of our life trying to do, through manipulating our external world. We're trying to remove those things that cause us suffering, and we're trying to gather those things that bring us happiness. But we're still experiencing suffering, and we haven't found true happiness. Our approach is not right. It's not correct. We want to experience happiness all the time. We want to be free from suffering all the time. We're spending all our time trying to change our external world, to remove what we believe to be causes of suffering or potential causes of suffering, and to gather causes of happiness. We've been doing that our whole life, but still we are not free from pain. And we haven't found true happiness. So you wonder, when is that going to start happening? Sometimes life delivers us false tops. You know when you're climbing up a mountain and you think you see the top, and you think, I just need to get to that place, I'll be at the top. And you get there, and another mountain, there's a higher place. And then we climb again, we get to that place, and then there's another one. And it's a little bit like that, isn't it? Sometimes we think, if I can just get my life in order, I can see it. I've just got to get this amount of money in the bank, this house, I've got to get this person in my life, I've got to remove that person from my life, I've just got to organize my home, I need to get that extension on the back of the building, I need to buy that sofa from Walmart, I need to buy that new barbecue from Home Depot, and then I'm there. I am there. I'm a liberated being. I am permanently free from all suffering. I've done it. I've reached the top of the mountain, and there is no other places to go. I've reached it. The pinnacle, the pinnacle, if that's the right word, of my existence. But we get to that place, and what happens? There's another level to go. And then we think, I've just got to get this, I've just got to get that. It's never ending. It's never ending. We are chasing our own tail. We will never find what we're seeking. We're looking in the wrong place. What we want to be free of is pain, unhappiness. What we want to experience is happiness. We have to remove the causes, the real causes of our day-to-day unhappiness, which is our negative minds. And we have to cultivate peace of mind. That is the main cause of happiness. It is only through those two things we can actually find what it is we want. We can truly say, I found what I'm looking for. It is only in the experience of peace of mind we can really say, now I have found what I'm looking for. True, uninterrupted happiness. And I can really benefit others, help others with that experience. So Buddha explained that this is our main enemy to our happiness, our negative minds. And we need to attain enlightenment to abandon our negative minds. What this means is that all negative minds are unenlightened minds. So whenever you're negative, you're unenlightened. The mind you're holding is unenlightened. What does that mean, unenlightened? When you're unenlightened about something, there's something missing that you're not aware of. You're not seeing something that's the truth. You're not seeing the truth. An enlightened person, if you're enlightened about something, you become aware of a fact that you didn't know before. You know, you're reading a book and you become enlightened about a scientific fact. You didn't know that fact before, but now you're enlightened by understanding that. You knew something that you didn't know before. Before you were unenlightened with respect to that fact. Now you're enlightened with respect to that fact. So Buddha said that whenever your mind is negative, you are unenlightened. You are not understanding the way things exist. Your mind is confused, unclear, clouded, obstructed. And if you can enlighten yourself to the truth of what you're perceiving when you have a negative mind, then your negative mind will disappear. And by extension, your suffering will disappear. All suffering is created by negative minds. All negative minds have the nature of being unenlightened, confused about how things exist. Confusion, darkness. So enlightenment means to enlighten yourself to the truth of things. And that's all the Buddha's teachings, 84,000 teachings he gave, to enlighten us to the way the world exists, the way things exist, the way things exist. And through that enlightenment, we will dispel negative minds, which are the nature of unenlightened, being unenlightened. And through dispelling these unenlightened minds, for example, of jealousy, pride, anger, attachment, they're all unenlightened minds, they're confused minds. Do you actually feel clear thinking when you're angry? Are you clear thinking when you're jealous? Or when you have strong craving and attachment for something, do you feel you're in control and that you're seeing things clearly? Maybe in the heat of the moment, we do think we are. Like when you're angry and somebody's appearing to you to be inherently horrible, you think you're enlightened. You think that the way you're seeing things is the way that they are. This person is appearing to me as horrible, and that's exactly what they're like. I'm enlightened in this situation. I know the truth. And if anyone else tells me otherwise, they are so unenlightened. They do not know the truth the way I do. I know the way things are. I'm the enlightened being around here. I see the truth. But no, when your mind is negative, necessarily you are definitely not enlightened. You're not enlightened to the truth of what is happening, what is appearing to you. Don't ever trust your mind when it's negative. It never sees the truth. We're only seeing the truth when our mind is peaceful. So Buddha is encouraging us, get enlightened, wake up. When you're angry, when you're jealous, when you're stressed, wake up, enlighten yourself to the truth of what is happening to you. So for example, imagine there is a man, a businessman, who is walking to work along a busy street. He's carrying his briefcase, and in his briefcase he has his important notes for the day. He has his Apple Mac 16-inch Pro computer, 2020 edition, with a new i9 core processor that he's very attached to. And he's busy walking to work with sense of purpose, and it's a busy, bustling street. And there's a lot of construction work taking place on the street. And he's heading, busy, focusing, getting to work. And then he hears a shout, a large shout, shouting of a voice behind him. And he turns around and he sees someone running full pelt towards him. And this person who's running towards him is really heavy built. And they look very aggressive. And they have tattoos over their body. And he reads the situation and thinks, this person is coming to attack me. They're coming to mug me, to steal my briefcase. They saw me using it, my Apple Mac on the train, and put it in my briefcase. All this flashes before his eyes very quickly. And then the guy who's running hits him full force, pushing him meters away onto the pavement, onto the sidewalk. And this businessman hits the ground, and his briefcase goes flying. And anger arises in his mind, strong anger in his mind. And he's looking at the person who pushed him over with such disgust, and seeing someone who's so horrible, has not one single good quality at all. And he thinks he's seeing the truth of the situation. From his perspective, he feels he's enlightened. He knows the truth. This person has just pushed me onto the ground. They're going to steal my laptop. They're mugging me. And then he sees a pile of scaffolding crash down from above. And he recognizes, that man just saved my life. And his whole perspective of the situation has such a shift, an unbelievable shift, because he misread the whole situation. We can say he was unenlightened about the real situation. He was unenlightened. He didn't know the truth of the situation. And then when the scaffolding came crashing down, I see, I understand the real situation. He became, we can say in that context, enlightened to the truth of that situation. And through connecting with that truth, what does he see now? He looks at that person with the most amazing gratitude and affection, realizing he was so judgmental before. He'd got it all wrong. And now what appears to him is an incredibly kind and beautiful person, someone for the rest of his life he will be in gratitude to. He will never forget. And whenever he brings that person to mind, it will bring affection and love into his heart, like a member of his own family. He saved his life. So all these people in your life that you think are harming you, are you sure you're seeing it in an enlightened way? Are you sure what you're seeing is the truth? Are you seeing the big picture? Because just maybe we're not seeing the truth. And Buddha's saying to us, if you're suffering, you're not seeing the truth. You are seeing it through the eyes of an unenlightened person. And to free yourself from that suffering, you need to enlighten yourself, to see it through enlightened eyes. Because when you see the big picture, the correct picture, just like the guy did, the businessman on the floor, the negativity within your mind will be dispelled. And when the negativity in your mind is dispelled, you experience peace of mind. And that peace of mind brings you happiness. It brings great meaning into your life. So for example, Buddha gave 84,000 teachings to enlighten our mind to the way things are. Atisha condensed the 84,000 teachings into 21 meditations. These are in the meditation handbook written by Geshe Kelsang Gyatso. These 21 meditations presented by Atisha. So next week we will look at the advice from Atisha's heart. But these 21 meditations are 21 enlightened ways in which we can see the world. They will be different to how you see the world now, because we often see the world in an unenlightened way, an unpeaceful way. So, for example, when we look at the news, we look at heads of government, we look at people in our society, and we see them engaging in negative actions. And that really gets us angry. How can they do that? How can they behave in such a way, causing harm to others? And we get angry. And what we perceive as an inherently horrible person who is like choosing to harm other people. But if our mind is angry, no matter how true that may appear to you, we're not enlightened. We're not seeing it correctly. For example, and I gave this example in Meditations for World Peace, that if someone came up to you and punched you on the nose, you would be very angry at the person. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, just imagine this, that you could see that that person who punched you on the nose, they have strings attached to each of their limbs, and above them is a puppeteer who's pulling their strings and causing them to behave in the way that they are. What does that do to your mind of anger? When you realize that they're not self-governing, and actually they punched you on the nose in dependence upon the puppeteer pulling the strings in such a way that caused them to punch you on the nose. So when you become, in quotes, enlightened to the truth of that situation, that it is the puppeteer who's causing that person to behave that way and to punch you on the nose, doesn't it kind of change what you direct your anger towards? You realize the person had no choice from their own side to punch me on the nose. It's not their fault. They couldn't act any other way because they're depending upon the puppeteer. If the puppeteer pulls a string that makes them punch me on the nose, they have no choice other than to do that because they're a dependent arising upon the puppeteer. They're not self-governing. They're at the mercy of the puppeteer. You can't get angry at a puppet for behaving in a particular way. It has no freedom, no choice. It is governed by the puppeteer. And so what Buddha taught is that when we see people engaging in negative actions, when you look at it in an enlightened way, not an unenlightened way, when you look at it at an enlightened way, you'll see people engage in negative actions because they are governed by their delusions from which they have no control over. They are like puppets of their own delusions, their own anger, their own jealousy, their own pride. They're being manipulated by their delusions, and they can't act in any other way than they are acting. Just like that person couldn't act in any other way than to punch you on the nose, if that's what the puppeteer is orchestrating. People are orchestrated by their delusions. And so we can apply this wisdom, it's enlightened wisdom. And you see that the people in positions of power engage in negative actions. They are governed by their delusions that they have no control over. They don't choose to develop delusions. We don't choose to develop delusions because if we did, all of us could become Buddhas in a moment. You would never have to come to another meditation class ever again. You could just decide right now, I will never ever get deluded again, and you've done it. But we don't have that freedom because we don't have control over our mind yet. And what is the same for us is the same for everyone. If you had real freedom, you could choose to be happy all the time. You could choose never to get depressed, never to get irritated, never to get attached. But these minds arise without choice. If you look at a big chocolate cake, if that's your thing, attachment just arises. It's not like we have to generate that mind through some extensive contemplation and meditation. It just naturally arises. And we find ourselves doing things that we know are going to cause us suffering, but we can't stop it. Isn't that weird? Even though these things are causes of suffering, we still indulge in them and overindulge and create many addictive habits, believing they're going to bring happiness. But we don't have any freedom over that. It's not like an option comes up in our day-to-day lives. Would you like to get deluded? Press yes to continue or no to cancel. We just get deluded. And so what you're starting to see, there's a difference between people and their delusions. And that people are governed by their delusions. That's what's to blame for all the suffering in our world, all the conflict, all the bad decisions that people make in our society, in government, world leaders. What's orchestrating the big mess that we see is the delusions in people's mind. And that's what we need to blame for the problems of the world, not people themselves. People are not our enemies. Delusions are our common enemy. And we kind of need to team together to overcome our common enemy. Stop blaming one another for our suffering and start to identify the correct object of blame, which is the delusions in our mind. That is an enlightened way of seeing the world. And if you apply that to somebody that really gets you angry, and you enlighten yourself to the truth of it, that the way the person is behaving is not their fault. It's a delusion in their mind, and that delusion's not them. It's just like a puppet causing them to behave in a particular way. They have no freedom and choice over that. They can't just stop it and turn it off. Once the causes and conditions are assembled for something, you can't stop the effect from arising. If the causes and conditions are assembled for a rainbow to arise, a rainbow will arise. You can't stop that. It's unstoppable. So if the cause and conditions come together for someone to get heavily deluded in their mind, they will get deluded. They have no choice or no freedom over that. They are a puppet, governed by the puppeteer of their delusions. And the delusions in people's minds depend upon so many things outside of their control. Their family upbringing, parental nourishment, their background, their friends, their culture, society, advertisements, their tendencies, their past lives, their karma. All these things play the part in what day-to-day minds we develop. But we don't have control over those things just yet. We can learn to control our mind. We definitely can through following the Buddhist path to enlightenment.